The alarms echoed through the corridors of Kepler Station like the death knell of civilization itself. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the observation deck, watching as the Hegemony's warfleet materialized from hyperspace. 17 massive vessels, each one dwarfing the modest research station that had been humanity's furthest outpost for the past 3 years. "How long until they reach us?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, barely 25 and fresh from the academy, checked his instruments with shaking fingers. 18 hours, Commander. Maybe less if they push their engines." Sarah closed her eyes. 18 hours to prepare for the impossible. Kepler Station housed 47 souls, scientists, engineers, and a skeleton security detail that had never expected to face anything more dangerous than a reactor malfunction. They had no warships, no weapons capable of scratching the Hegemony's hulls, and no reinforcements coming. The Hegemony had made their intentions clear 3 days ago when they'd broadcast their ultimatum across all frequencies. Humanity would surrender all territorial claims beyond the Sol system, submit to Hegemony oversight, and provide tribute in the form of raw materials and technology. The alternative was extermination. Earth's response had been swift and predictable. A middle finger transmitted on every diplomatic channel, followed by the mobilization of humanity's modest defense fleet. But Earth was 47 light years away, and the nearest human patrol was still weeks out. Kepler Station was alone. "Commander!" came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief xenobiologist, approaching with that peculiar mix of terror and excitement that seemed to define her species. "We need to talk." Sarah followed Elena to the laboratory section, where the rest of the station's senior staff had gathered. The air was thick with tension, and the smell of recycled oxygen that seemed more stale than usual. "The Hegemony isn't just here to destroy us," Elena began, her dark eyes intense. "They're here for the quantum cause." The quantum cause. Sarah should have known. The breakthrough that had made Kepler Station possible. Humanity's first successful attempt at creating stable, artificial quantum fields that could power faster-than-light communications across galactic distances. The technology that had finally given humanity a voice in the cosmic community. "They can't have them," said Chief Engineer Ryan O'Brien, his Irish accent thickening with anger. "Do you know what they could do with instantaneous communication across their entire empire? They'd be unstoppable." "They're already unstoppable," Webb pointed out grimly. "Have you seen the size of those ships?" Dr. Vasquez shook her head. "That's where you're wrong, Marcus. The Hegemony isn't unstoppable. They're just predictable." She activated the holographic display, showing detailed scans of the approaching fleet. "Look at their formation. Classic Hegemony doctrine. Overwhelming force applied in a direct assault. They've been using the same tactics for 3,000 years because they've never needed to adapt." Sarah studied the display, her mind racing. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Elena said with a slight smile, "that we give them exactly what they expect to see. If you're loving this story of human ingenuity against impossible odds, hit that subscribe button and let's see how far we can take this channel. Now, back to Sarah's desperate plan. The next 16 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Sarah watched her people work with the kind of desperate efficiency that only came when death was breathing down your neck. O'Brien and his engineering team were in the quantum core chamber, their hands flying over control panels as they implemented Elena's insane plan. The science team worked alongside them, their theoretical knowledge finally being put to a practical test that could save or doom them all. "Status report," Sarah called out as she entered the core chamber. "Connections are stable," O'Brien reported, sweat beading on his forehead. "The quantum fields are resonating at exactly the frequency Elena calculated. But Commander, if this doesn't work..." "If it doesn't work, we'll be dead anyway," Sarah finished. "Keep going." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The hegemony expected to find a helpless research station filled with terrified humans begging for mercy. Instead, they would find exactly that on the surface. But beneath the station's hull, in the quantum core chambers, humanity would show why they'd earned their place among the stars. The quantum cores weren't just communication devices. Elena had discovered that by linking them in a specific configuration and overloading their power systems, they could create a quantum cascade, a chain reaction that would destabilize the fundamental forces holding matter together in a localized area. "It's never been tested," Elena had admitted during the planning session. The theoretical models suggest it would create a sphere of destruction roughly 10 kilometers in diameter. "And if the models are wrong," Sarah had asked, "then we might accidentally tear a hole in space-time itself." The risks were astronomical, but so was the alternative. "Commander," Webb's voice crackled over the comm system, "Hegemony fleet is dropping out of hyperspace. They're in weapons range." Sarah took her position on the bridge, watching as the alien warships settled into their attack formation. The lead vessel was a nightmare of organic curves and metallic spines, its biomechanical hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to shift and write like living tissue. The communication array activated, and a face appeared on the main screen that would haunt Sarah's dreams for years to come, if she lived long enough to have dreams. The Hegemony Admiral was a towering figure, its six-limbed form covered in chitinous plates that gleamed like polished obsidian. Its multiple eyes fixed on Sarah with the cold intelligence of a predator. "Human vessel," the creature spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of tones that somehow conveyed both beauty and menace. "I am Fleet Admiral Keth Vox of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. You will surrender your quantum technology and submit to processing. You have 10 minutes to comply." Sarah straightened in her chair, drawing on every ounce of military training she'd ever received. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Kepler Station. We respectfully decline your offer." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, human. This was not an offer. This was a statement of inevitability. Your species has shown remarkable innovation leads only to extinction." "Maybe," Sarah replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "But we'd rather die free than live as slaves." Keth Vox tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "Fascinating. Your species continues to surprise us. Very well. Your destruction will serve as an example to others who might consider defiance." The communication ended, and Sarah opened an internal channel. "All hands, this is the Commander. We knew this moment would come. Today, we stand not just for ourselves, but for every human who has ever looked up at the stars and dared to dream. Whatever happens next, remember that we chose to face it, standing up." The Hegemony ships began their approach, their weapons charging with an ominous purple glow. Sarah counted 17 vessels, each one capable of reducing Kepler Station to atoms. The lead ship alone outmassed the station by a factor of 50. "Elena," Sarah called the science station. How long until the cascade is ready? 3 minutes, Commander. The quantum fields are building to critical resonance. Make it 2 minutes. The first energy beams lanced out from the hegemony fleet, striking the station's shields with devastating force. The entire structure shuddered, and Sarah could hear the groaning of stressed metal throughout the hull. Shields down to 60%, Webb reported. They're concentrating fire on the communication array. Sarah nodded grimly. The hegemony was following their standard playbook. Disable communications first, then weapons, then life support. A slow, methodical destruction designed to break the enemy's will before finishing them off. Let them think they're winning, she muttered. Another troop struck the station and the lights flickered. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the bridge in an eerie red glow. Sarah could smell ozone and burning electronics. Commander? Elena's voice was tight with concentration. Quantum cascade is at 90%. The fields are starting to destabilize local space-time. If we don't trigger it in the next 30 seconds... Do it, Sarah ordered. The tension is building. What's your favorite sci-fi movie that gets your heart racing like this? Drop it in the comments below and let's see what classics we're all watching. Elena's hands moved across her control panel with the precision of a concert pianist. Quantum cascade initiated. Field collapses in 5, 4, 3, 2. The universe held its breath. For a moment, nothing happened. The hegemony ships continued their methodical bombardment, their weapons tearing through the station's defenses like paper. Sarah felt her heart sink as she wondered if they'd miscalculated, if Elena's theories had been wrong, if they were about to die for nothing. Then, space itself screamed. The quantum cascade began at the station's core, a sphere of absolute darkness that seemed to devour light itself. Memorable moment, writes user, age 6. She discovered new words. A truly brilliant idea. Sometimes expressing yourself is more important than achieving the idea, and Daniel's ideas help make you a baritone. The Magic Factory, a proud author of 5 Christmas classics, November Tomorrow. If you or your child would like miniature AT Vision props and miniatures from along his corgi, let Daniel help. You can use the code GDHELP24 or the link in our show notes to get 10% off your order. The sphere expanded outward at a significant fraction of the speed of light, and where it touched the station's hull, matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply erased from reality as if it had never been. The hegemony ships had seconds to react. The closest vessel, a cruiser that had been moving in for the killing blow, vanished into the expanding sphere of nothingness. Its destruction was silent, absolute, and terrifying in its completeness. "My God," Webb whispered. "What have we done?" The sphere continued to expand, reaching its theoretical maximum diameter of 10 kilometers, before beginning to collapse in on itself. When it finally winked out of existence, taking with it Kepler Station and 3 hegemony warships, the surviving alien vessels hung motionless in space, their crews presumably as stunned as Sarah felt. But Sarah wasn't done. She'd gambled everything on a single desperate plan, and it had worked better than she'd dared hope. But now, the hard part came. "All hands," she announced over the comm system. "Preparing for emergency evacuation. We have approximately 10 minutes before the quantum instability tears apart what's left of our hull." The evacuation was chaos, controlled by training and desperation. 47 people crammed into escape pods designed for half that number. Their life support systems pushed them to the breaking point. Sarah was the last to leave, following the ancient tradition of captains and their ships. As her pod ejected from the dying station, she looked back to see the hegemony fleet still holding position, their weapons powered down. For a moment, she wondered if they were planning to pick off the escape pods one by one. Then Admiral Keth Vox's face appeared on her pod's emergency communication screen. "Commander Chen," the alien's voice was different now, respectful, almost awed. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony never encountered a species willing to destroy itself rather than submit. "Your people have earned something today that cannot be taken by force." "And what's that?" Sarah asked. "Respect. The Hegemony Council will reconsider its position regarding humanity. You have proven that your species possesses the one quality we value above all others, the courage to choose death over surrender." The communication ended, and Sarah watched in amazement as the Hegemony fleet began to withdraw. One by one, the massive ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving only debris and the lingering effects of humanity's quantum weapon. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the debriefing room at Naval Command on Mars, facing a panel of admirals and politicians who were still trying to understand what had happened at Kepler Station. The quantum cascade had been humanity's first successful deployment of what the media was already calling the reality bomb, a weapon so devastating that its very existence had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "The hegemony has withdrawn from all human territories," Admiral Harrison reported, his weathered face showing a mixture of pride and concern. "They've also transmitted a formal recognition of humanity's sovereign right to exist. First time in recorded history they've done anything like that." Sarah nodded, but she felt no triumph. 47 people had survived the destruction of Kepler Station, but the cost had been enormous. The quantum cascade had torn a permanent scar in space-time, a dead zone where the laws of physics still seemed uncertain. "What's our next move?" she asked. Admiral Harrison smiled grimly. "We're going to do what humans do best, Commander. We're going to learn from this. The quantum cascade technology is being studied by every research facility in the solar system. Dr. Vasquez's theoretical work has already led to breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel and defensive systems. And the hegemony? They're watching, waiting. The galaxy's balance of power just shifted, and everyone knows it. Humanity isn't just another species to be conquered anymore. We're players in the game." Sarah looked out the window at the red landscape of Mars, where construction crews were already working on the next generation of human starships. Ships that would carry the quantum cascade technology to the stars, serving as both shield and sword for humanity's expansion into the cosmos. "The hegemony made one mistake," she said quietly. "What's that?" "They assumed that because we were small and weak, we would think small and weak. They never considered that humans might prefer to burn down the universe rather than kneel. If this story of human defiance against impossible odds gives you chills, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. What's your favourite strategy game where the underdog can win through clever tactics?" 6 months later, the Treaty of Kepler was signed aboard the neutral space station Harmony's Edge. The hegemony, humanity, and 17 other species put their marks on a document that would reshape galactic civilization. The treaty established humanity's right to exist as a sovereign species. But more importantly, it established the principle that no species had the right to demand submission from another. Sarah stood at the observation deck, watching as human and alien diplomats worked side by side to hammer out the details of this new galactic order. The quantum cascade had done more than destroy a few ships. It had destroyed the assumption that might made right, that technological superiority guaranteed victory. "Commander," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to see Dr. Vasquez approaching, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who'd spent months explaining the same equations to increasingly skeptical audiences. "Doctor, how are the presentations going?" Elena smiled wryly. "Half the galaxy wants to ban quantum cascade technology as too dangerous. The other half want to steal it for themselves. Business as usual. And our position? The same as always. We'll share the defensive applications freely, but the weapon itself stays under human control. Mutually assured destruction works best when only one side has the really big stick." Sarah nodded. It was a delicate balance, but one that humanity had learned to manage. The quantum cascade had given them a seat at the galactic table, but it had also made them responsible for ensuring that seat wasn't used to repeat the hegemony's mistakes. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked quietly. "What did we do at Kepler Station?" Sarah considered the question. 47 people survived the destruction of humanity's most remote outpost. But in doing so, they had prevented the extinction of their entire species and changed the course of galactic history. "No," she said finally. "We did what we had to do. We showed the galaxy that humanity won't go quietly into the night. Sometimes that's the only choice that matters." As the two women watched the stars through the observation port, neither of them noticed the small fleet of human ships that had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The newest generation of human starships, equipped with quantum cascade technology and crewed by volunteers who understood that sometimes the best way to preserve peace was to be prepared for war. The hegemony had taught humanity a valuable lesson at Kepler Station: that survival sometimes required making impossible choices. But humanity had taught the galaxy something even more important: that the species from the small blue planet weren't just survivors. They were the ones who would make sure everyone else got to survive too. The stars stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with civilizations that had learned to coexist rather than conquer. And somewhere among those stars, humanity continued to grow, to explore, and to stand ready to make the hard choices that would keep the peace. Because that's what humans did. They looked at impossible odds and found a way to make them possible. They faced extinction and chose defiance. They stared into the abyss and lit a match. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to change everything. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but now it was also full of hope. And in the end, that made all the difference.